Hello and welcome back to Cosmic Compass, where we talk all about astrocartography and coming home to your cosmic compass. In today's episode, I'm going to be talking about Pluto lines and why Pluto lines are not as bad as a lot of people make them out to be. Yes, Pluto has its difficulties, and Pluto has aspects of it that can be really hard. And after working with so many clients, I can tell you that there are a lot of difficult things that come from Pluto lines. And I'll be talking about Pluto on the angles and what they can represent and what I've seen time and time again with clients. But I also want to talk about the good side of Pluto and why Pluto can also be quite a powerful place for change and alchemization and transforming your life for the better, and why you will never be the same after leaving a Pluto line. Let's get started with today's episode. And before I do want to let you know that my certification is now open. The Relocation Astrology certification is now open and available. This has been something that I've been thinking about for the last year, as a lot of my students in my flagship Relocation Astrology course have requested that I create a test assessment, a certification of sorts, to test my students on making sure that they're doing well with their readings and that they're giving accurate information to their clients. This certification is the only live astrocartography relocation course I offer. It includes dozens of hours of course material, including 10 modules on business, marketing, and how to build a 10K a month business doing astrocartography and astrology. I am on a mission to not only do astrocartography work and to teach more people about the energies and stories of places, but also to help inspire and empower the next generation of astrologers. Astrologers who know their worth, who charge their worth, and are having thriving businesses serving the world. The truth of the matter is that there's a lot of people that need help and clarity, and not enough people serving, not enough people helping, and we need all hands on deck. We need more astrologers, and we specifically need more astrocartographers and astrologers that uniquely specialize in relocation astrology, because the future is relocation, and astrocartography is just going to get bigger and more mainstream as the years continue. Uranus in Gemini and Jupiter in Gemini, I'm looking at you, and we need all hands on deck. We really do. We need more astrologers. And so if you wanted to join my certification program and also have the option of joining my reader directory, because I'm going to be scaling back on doing one-on-one private consultations. I'll still be doing them, of course, because I love working one-on-one with people, but I need more time on my schedule and we need more readers. And so I've created the Aligned Astrocartographers directory to send to my clients and to get more bookings for you. For all of you who are starting your businesses, I'm excited to watch your consultation practice thrive. And that's what the directory is for. So if you want to check out all of that information, check out my website, helenawoods.com. You can click on the certification button and see all of the details and what's included. The price for the certification will go up on June 1st. So if you wanted the early bird founders sale, the founders discount for the first round of the certification, that will end. Price will go up June 1st of this year, and then doors officially close for the certification on June 9th. So if you wanted in for this first round before the 2025 round, we'll have another live round of the certification in 2025. But if you wanted to get in before next year, this is your chance. Before June 9th, doors will close. So all that said, let's get into today's episode on Pluto lines. Why do so many people online in social media fear monger about Pluto lines? Well, it's probably because Pluto, it represents death and rebirth, transformation, the intensity of life, exposing truth, the underworld, power, corruption, manipulation, control, secrets, investigations, meeting the unseen, and showing us what is hidden and invisible. And that can be quite scary. You know, a lot of us want to live a life that's pleasant, that's comfortable, that's easy. And Pluto is not pleasant. And a lot of us don't want to feel the intensity of Pluto. And for those of you who want to avoid that energy, I can totally understand why you would not want to live on a Pluto astrocartography line or a Pluto Perrin, a Pluto latitude crossing. Because even if you don't have any Pluto astrocartography lines within orb, you may have a Pluto Perrin, and that can add that Plutonian intensity that to your experience and to your environment. For those of us who have a lot of strong Pluto aspects within our identity or within our birth chart, you might be drawn to intense experiences and thus Pluto lines. I myself have Pluto in the first house. Pluto colors my identity in a lot of ways. It's located in my first house, and it's Pluto directly opposes my Taurus sun by degree. It's zero degree opposition. So Pluto is a huge part of my life, my chart, and what I came here to do with my life, my natal promise. And it shows itself in really difficult ways at times throughout my childhood, my adult life, and it also shows its beautiful side in my life. And so I want to talk about the pros and cons of Pluto and why you don't need to be as afraid of Pluto lines as the internet will make it out to be. Now, before we talk about Pluto lines and what they can represent and what my experiences have been with them and with my clients and what you can expect with Pluto, let's talk a little bit about the myth of Pluto. In Greek mythology, Hades was the unseen one in the underworld. He had the cap of invisibility, also called the helmet of Pluto. And the thing about Pluto and Hades and the underworld and this Greek myth is that the doors are always open to go into the underworld, but the return can be very difficult. And there's a lot of hard work and labor in getting back up from the dungeon of Pluto, the dungeons, the underworld, right? And it's so interesting because I had a client literally 3 days ago tell me when she was living on her Pluto line, it felt like she was in the depths of a dungeon and she was looking up and trying to get out. And she said that to me and I was like, oh my gosh, that is so literal of Pluto and the underworld and Hades and what that all represents. But the thing about the underworld is that you find truth down there. You find what is hidden, what secrets need to be unveiled. You find what is within you psychologically, because Pluto is big on psychology. What within you needs to be let go and shed and removed so that you can step into the truth of who you are. I always think of that quote by Michelangelo when he was creating the statue of David. When Michelangelo was asked how he carved the statue of David, he answered, "It's simple. I just remove everything that is not David." So in essence, it's this addition through subtraction element, this looking in the wrong places and going back within, going back to the core of who you are, removing the layers that are not authentic, that are not real, that are not actually an aspect of your authentic truth, your soul on the deepest and purest of levels. When you remove those layers, you get to the essence of you. And I always think of Pluto with this. I always think of Pluto when I think of removal and removing and shedding and letting go that which is not truth. Because Pluto is a truth teller, and Pluto will show you the darkness and will show you the underworld, even if it's not pleasant. And so when you go to these Pluto lines, these are places where you find truth, whether it's about truth within self, which is a Pluto ascendant line, or Pluto when Pluto was rising in the world, your childhood and your family, your origins, your upbringing, your traditions, your ancestry. That would be an IC line. Others, when you discover the truth about other people, that would be a descendant, or when Pluto was setting somewhere in the world. And then society and the mass collective at large, governments, corporations, working in an industry of some sort. That's an MC, the midheaven. culminating, when Pluto was culminating somewhere in the world. Those are lines or places in the world where you'll experience hidden truths coming out around that area of life. So Pluto lines, when you think of Pluto, think of Hades. Think of receiving mysterious, secret, specific information. And it is very intense because sometimes truth is uncomfortable. It is not pleasant to hear the truth sometimes. It's like doing shadow work. I remember when I first got started doing a lot of shadow work, I was doing to be magnetic work, and I was living in Corsica at the time. I had just moved to Corsica. And one of the modules that you had to do for the shadow work was you had to ask your friends, what are the aspects of me that you don't like, that aren't pleasant, that aren't helpful? What are the aspects of me that has shown itself at times that, has hurt you or has made you feel uncomfortable, etc. And, getting that feedback at first is like, ooh, it's scary, you're nervous. You're afraid of what will come back. It takes real courage to do shadow work. It takes real bravery to ask for the uncomfortable truth and to get it back. And with that, it's not relaxing. It's not peaceful, right? People who live on Pluto lines do not describe it as a peaceful place. All of my clients I've worked with, when we talk about Pluto lines, if they've lived on Pluto lines, they describe them as places of intensity, places where their lives changed, places where they had to deal with things like abuse, corruption, betrayal, things like uncovering oneself and personal power. Pluto lines are also really powerful for powerful people, being a teacher, being a person who works in psychology or helps people do shadow work. I know I love To Be Magnetic. The woman who started To Be Magnetic, her name's Lacey Phillips, and I'm a huge fan of hers. I think she's just beautiful energy, big expander for me in my own life. And she lives on a Pluto line, and she's always lived on a Pluto line in California. And she's using that well in the sense of being able to go into the depths of psychology and subconscious work and meditation work and hypnosis and going deep into the underworld of shadow work to help teach and guide other people to step into their authentic truth and their authentic selves. That's the job of the underworld, is to expose that and to bring those uncomfortable truths to light. But through that experience, you come out of it more empowered, more authentic, and more true to yourself. And truth is a very powerful thing. You're forced to be reckoned with when you live within your power of your authenticity. And so there's a lot to be gained from Pluto lines. And a lot of people won't talk about that because the internet loves to fearmonger and make you be afraid of the dark side of life. There's nothing to be afraid of with these things. Now, keep in mind, this isn't to make Pluto some pleasant thing, because it's like Saturn, right? Saturn has a lot of blessings and wonderful things about Saturn. Saturn teaches you experience. Saturn gives you knowledge that will help you step into your purpose. But Saturn also rules depression and coldness and isolation and heaviness. Same with Pluto. Pluto will give you that sense of power and truth and magnetism, but it can also give you that sense of obsession, paranoia, intensity. It can also deal with abuse and corruption and manipulation and control, and especially with other people. I wouldn't be afraid of Pluto lines unless you have aspects to your Pluto, to your personal planet specifically. Pluto squaring or opposing personal planets in your chart. So like Pluto opposing your sun, right? That's a very difficult aspect. Pluto opposite sun is a very hard aspect in a chart to see. Same with Pluto opposite moon. These are very personal luminaries that are really personal to you. And having Pluto make a sharp or intense aspect to a personal planet, it's going to be really felt and it's going to feel more personal. Having an aspect to Neptune or Uranus, that's more of a generational thing. That's a group of people that you were born with. But when we're talking about personal experiences with Pluto, I would really look to your personal planet. So sun, moon are the big ones. Venus, Mercury, Mars, and even Saturn too. Saturn moves, it takes 3 years to move through a sign, so it's very slow moving. And Jupiter as well. Jupiter takes 1 year to move through a sign. And I would look to Jupiter and Saturn as well. And you want to really note, and in your birth chart, when you're looking at your birth chart in Pluto, you want to note if there are any squares or oppositions. Those can be very difficult. So going to Pluto lines when you have those personal planet squares and oppositions can be really hard. Same with conjunctions. If you have your moon conjunct Pluto, sun conjunct Pluto, which means they're together, that can be, a more difficult experience, a more intense experience. It's being brought to your public awareness in a more conscious, visible, dynamic way. Now, if you have supportive aspects to your Pluto, like I had a client just the other day who has moon trine Pluto. What a powerful aspect. Emotional resilience. There's that strength of character that can be really powerful to tap into when you go to a Pluto line. So look at your aspects. And that's the number one thing I would say about Pluto. Look at the aspects to personal planets. That's going to be your sign whether or not Pluto lines are going to be supportive for you. And if you didn't know about Pluto, Pluto is a generational planet. So the baby boomer generation, they were born with Pluto in Leo. Millennials born with Pluto in Scorpio. I myself am a millennial. We have the Gen Xers, Pluto in Libra. We have Gen Z, Pluto in Sag, and Pluto in Capricorn just recently. The new generation, the young generation that's growing up as children right now. So we have these. So remember that Pluto is a generational planet, and it's not as much personal to us in our birth chart unless we have really strong aspects with our personal planets to Pluto, or Pluto is in our first house, which is the house of our identity and who we are. If you have one of those two things, either Pluto in your first house or Pluto aspecting personal planets really tightly, Pluto will take on more of a personal role in your life. I've been to Pluto lines, and Pluto lines have always been intense for me. And that being said, Pluto is on my ascendant in my first house, so huge part of my identity and who I am, but also Pluto is opposing my sun. So, me going to Pluto lines, they are more intense experiences, more challenging experiences than someone else will have. The last time I was on my Pluto line, I went to Iceland. I was there on my Pluto line and my sun line because they're opposed directly in my chart. So anytime Pluto is somewhere in the world, the sun line will also be right next to it because it's a signature in the birth chart. But when I went to that Pluto and that sun line, I went when the eclipse in Taurus was hitting my natal sun, very close to degree, in October of 2023. That was when I went. And I didn't plan it that way. I didn't actually look at the transits. I wanted to go to Iceland. I felt a call. My best friend and I did a road trip, and it was really fun for the two of us. We had a great time. I've got some really wonderful relationship lines in Iceland. And it was actually where I realized I wanted to marry my husband was in Iceland. Venus is setting, and so is Mercury. Mercury and Venus, relationship lines. But when my best friend left, she was just there for a week. She left and I stayed in Iceland to do some work, and the eclipse happened right on my sun. And it was one of the most intense experiences of my life in a psychological way. Although there were some definite physical, literal things that happened, like I got hurt and our car broke down and fell around a ditch and we had to get a tow truck, and it was this whole intense experiences with my drone, and just there was a lot going on. But when I think about Iceland, I think about the psychological profound impact and transformation I had there. I felt like what happened was I broke through so many subconscious patterns and beliefs from my childhood that I'd never realized were a thing. I've done all this shadow work for years, and there was a certain piece to that story of my childhood and my subconscious, psychological upbringing and things like that I never realized until that eclipse. And it all came up within me, and it was a really emotionally intense experience for me to go through. But through that eclipse and being on that Pluto and that sun line, I came home a different person. I came home a more powerful person. I healed a lot, and I swear to God, I'm not the same person that I was before that trip. There was a powerful reckoning and realization within me of stepping into my personal empowerment and what I came here to do on this planet, and stepping into my worthiness and stepping into my deservingness and who I am. And a lot of that I don't think would have been realized if I hadn't gone to that line and there was a calling to go there. And you would think I would see that Pluto line and not want to go there because it's scary, right? The internet makes Pluto lines to be scary, and you think of the keywords of Pluto and you get afraid of it. But that was a place that changed me for the better. That was a place that made me stronger and different and more empowered, more in my personal power. And when I think of Iceland, I think of the transformation that I went through and it really set me on a new course that I don't think I would have ever experienced if I hadn't been there in Iceland. And the reason I experienced that was because I followed the call. I followed the intuitive nudge to go there at that time during an eclipse right on my sun, which is, eclipses are not easy. They're actually more malefic times in the world. They're malefic times for people. They set about great changes that can be very jarring and unsettling. And it was for me. But I came out of it better. And so let's talk a little bit about what some things you could expect when going to a Pluto line. Well, speaking from experience with my clients, because I've worked with so many people who live on Pluto lines, I know what to expect, especially when, now again, it depends on your birth chart, it depends on you and your birth chart and your Pluto and the aspects to your Pluto, but let's talk a little bit about some keywords with each angle when Pluto's on an angle, and the Pluto lines, the Pluto astrocartography lines on your map. So Pluto on the ascendant, you're going to be a different person when you leave. It's all about your identity, your sense of self, transformation within identity. Now, I would be careful just physically here. This is a physical spot where I would take care of your body and your health, but it's great for doing shadow work. It's great for teaching and being a leader in psychology, shadow work, spirituality, law, working in the wine industry, mining, industrial work. There's a lot of things that can be really useful for Pluto. Pluto ascendant lines are great places for journaling and self-analysis and going within, finding the inner strength within you to come out of that place stronger and more empowered than ever. Pluto setting, when Pluto is setting, Pluto on the descendant, this can be dealing with power dynamics within a relationship. A lot of clients I've had have had a lot of clients that I've worked with who've lived on Pluto descendant lines have dealt with abuse from a partner, manipulation from a partner, stalking, obsession from a partner, things like that. They can be really intense, especially when it's involving personal planets, when it's aspecting personal planets. Pluto descendant can also be working with powerful people, allies, partnerships. Collaborations in business with other people can be very successful here. Pluto descendant, though, you're going to need to be very truthful with people, and you're going to need to make sure that other people are being very truthful with you. Pluto demands truth. And so any type of lying or deceitfulness or not exposing truth and authenticity can prove difficulty later on down the road, especially if you're hiding things. It is not wise to hide anything on a Pluto line because it will come out. Pluto descendant lines also, though, can be power couple dynamics. I've had a lot of clients who they met their love of their life on those lines, the Pluto descendant, and they are like power couple. They're so influential. They work in business together. Their partner is a very powerful person or has those characteristics of Pluto within their identity, within the person, their spouse, their partner that they're in a relationship with. That person embodies Pluto qualities. Pluto on the midheaven, one of the most successful places on a map. I've had so many clients who live on Pluto MC lines who work in government, politics, high-profile people. I've worked with a lot of people who are very visible in politics as well as celebrities in the music industry, in films. It's amazing to see the kind of influence that people who live on Pluto MC lines have in their industry. I think of Pluto MC lines as disrupting an industry and transforming it in a new way. And a lot of the clients I've worked with who are high profile, who are very public figures, they are people who have changed industries, people who have changed laws, people who have made huge impacts on things that you and I are using in our everyday life. Education, as well as the music industry, the film industry. Industries have been changed, dismantled, catalyzing new ways of doing things in industries. People who live on Pluto MC lines, they're the ones that are doing it. And a lot of these people, they don't even realize they're living on those lines. They just move there. And then I pointed out to them, and it's like, wow, that's really interesting. But Pluto MC is also dealing with corruption, the abuse of power within industries, authoritative people. People who are not in the public limelight, usually on this line, they have difficulties with their boss. Power dynamics, power, corruption, control, issues with control with their boss. I've also had a lot of clients who work in engineering on this line, or who work in a field where their boss is very controlling, domineering, or authoritative. Working in industries and big businesses is a big theme of Pluto MC lines, and they can feel very intense, working a lot. But again, look to your chart and see what Pluto is aspecting. And lastly, we have Pluto IC. Pluto IC lines are bizarre. People are drawn to them. People want to go to their Pluto IC lines. And I personally, now this isn't logically, there's no evidence to this, there's no practical, logical evidence that points to this, but I am convinced that Pluto IC lines have past life connections. I have had so many clients who have told me randomly out of the blue in sessions, I feel like I had a past life here in the world. I feel like my soul has been here, has lived here. I dream about this place. This place keeps coming up. What's going on there? What line is there? And it's always the Pluto IC line. Also, the lunar nodes are big with that too, but Pluto IC is the planetary line when a planet's on an angle that I am looking at for past lives, because there is just this sense of, there is this energy of familiarity, the past. The IC line, the IC angle in astrology represents the past, what came before, the ancestry, the family origins, as well as childhood and your parents, especially when it's in the fourth house. When the IC relocates to the fourth house, there's a lot of those themes. But Pluto represents change, transformation. You yourself could be changing your beliefs. You could be changing or transforming your identity from your childhood, or what happened in your youth, or your relationship to your parents, your relationship to your family could change a lot. This isn't a place where it's necessarily ease-filled, but it is a place where you will come out of this place feeling like the foundation of your life, the structures, the private part of you has gone through radical transformation. And weirdly enough, people feel drawn to this line a lot of the time. And it's really interesting. A lot of people love living on this line. Again, look to your natal Pluto in your chart. But this is one of those weird places where people love going to this line. Those are the Pluto lines. Those are the Pluto astrocartography lines. And I want you to remember that Pluto lines can be very successful places. I've met so many people who have had powerful, for the better, experiences on Pluto lines. Now, would I recommend someone move to a Pluto line? No. Usually no. It doesn't matter how well aspected a Pluto line is, unless someone wants to do something in a field that's related to Plutonian themes, like shadow work, psychology, therapy, spiritual deep dive things, law, wine, industry work, working in an industry, government, politics. These types of things can be helpful for Pluto MC or just Pluto lines in general. Would I choose to live there if I want peace and ease and comfortability and joy and appreciation? No, I'd probably go to a Venus line. I live on a Venus line. It's my favorite place in the world. And yet, the calling to Pluto lines is always so strong, especially for those of us that have Plutonian qualities in our birth chart. Iceland is one of my top 3 favorite places in the world. I'm constantly thinking about going back. If I had all the money in the world, I would buy a house in Iceland, in Reykjavik, or somewhere in the country, and I would spend 3 months of the year there. It is one of the most intense places in the world for me, and the 2 times that I've been there, I've had really intense experiences there that have been hard. But it is a place in the world that I am called to. My Pluto on the ascendant self seeks the intensity and seeks transformation and seeks personal development and growth. And that Pluto line in Iceland, the Pluto MC line that I have in Iceland, it does that for me. In all the ways that I want to be stretched, in all the ways I want to be expanded. And even though it's hard, I always want to go back. I always want to be back on that Pluto line. And it's interesting. And so this is why I really urge you to look at your birth chart, because you may have a lot of Pluto themes in who you are. And you might be drawn, if you're a Sag rising, Scorpio rising, Libra rising, and you're listening to this, Leo rising, Virgo rising, right? You might desire to go to Pluto lines and to be connected with that energy because you have that Pluto in your first house of identity. And so something to look at, something to note. So Pluto lines, don't be afraid of them. And don't let the internet make you fear going to a line just because the stereotype of it is that it's hard. Yes, Pluto brings truth. Yes, the truth can be uncomfortable. But sometimes that uncomfortability is what makes life worth living. If we wanted to all be happy and comfortable all the time, just go to a Venus line. Go to a line that's really nice in your chart, a benefic, a moon ascendant, and just live there. But if you want to be challenged and stretched and you want to uncover truth and go deep into the depths, don't be afraid of Pluto lines. And as someone who has a lot of Pluto in my own chart and in my own identity, I love Pluto lines, and I'm not going to allow the fear of the internet to stop me from continuing to travel to them. With all that said, I hope you enjoyed this little inspiring message on Pluto lines, and not to fear the internet or TikTok astrologers or pop astrologers that don't know because they haven't actually lived it, or they haven't lived on a Pluto line, or they haven't experienced it for themselves, or they haven't looked at their own birth charts and seen how Pluto is aspecting their own personal planets. Don't listen to that. Follow your own inner guidance, honor your own authenticity, and honor your truth. And if you feel the call to go to a Pluto line and your Pluto is well aspected, go. Don't be afraid. I hope that this episode inspires you to follow your own cosmic compass and to trust yourself. You know deep in the depths of your soul where to be and when. And when you follow that inner guidance, you will be taken to places that will transform your life for the better. And Pluto lines are just one of those lines that will help you get there. I will see you in the next episode here on Cosmic Compass. And don't forget, doors close to the certification, the Relocation Astrology certification on June 9th. So if you wanted to join in for the first live round of 2024, be sure to check out the details on my website at helenawoods.com/relocation certification. The link will be in the show notes. Have a magical day, kindred spirit, and keep on following your cosmic compass.